Hello, and welcome to 6 Degrees from Cannabis. I'm your host, Tori Rarick, PharmD and holistic healer. Each episode features a candid conversation about how connecting with the cannabis plant has enhanced an individual's wellness journey. Here to honor the plant, talk about healing, and have fun. Today's conversation demands respect for herbal medicines. Clinically oriented, plant decriminalization advocate Dr. Lola calls cannabis her wellness tool and sees it as her aging supportive multivitamin. Inside this chat, she speaks to the contrast of growing up with herbal medicine as the first line of therapy versus her pharmacy program training that emphasized negative aspects of plant remedies. In light of the psychedelic renaissance, Dr. Lola brings up the crucial reflection of what happens when humans manipulate herbal medicines. Keep listening to hear about her affinity toward cannabis, despite it being the one herb she was warned against as a child, and how she navigates the balance of Western and traditional worlds. Welcome back to the show, everyone. Today we're speaking with Dr. Lola Ohonba. She's a cannabis professional and helps plant medicine enthusiasts succeed in their wellness journey using the healing power of botanicals like cannabis and psychedelics. We just so happened to meet inside of a Clubhouse room called the Mushroom Temple. So Dr. Lola helps healthcare cannabis professionals and dispensaries, alternative medicine enthusiasts understand health benefits of plant medicine so that they can effectively guide their clients on the best therapy that's ideal for them to achieve better health and well-being that costs less. She focuses on both plant and conventional medicine using her background as a medicinal herb user growing up in West Africa and, get this, clinical pharmacist to explain how plant medicine works with other medicine and disease states in order to prevent adverse reactions. You are a dream come true for me, Dr. Lola. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tori. It's great to be in the house with you, a fellow clinical pharmacist. I'm so proud to be here with you. Thank you for having me.
Yes, we just hit it right off. Like I was saying, in the Mushroom Temple, I saw your name pop up and I was like, she's cool. I need to know her. And then hearing that you have ties in Nigeria, I was like, oh, yes, yes, I'm meant to know you.
I know. I mean, tracing back your own heritage back to Nigeria, that is super, super cool. You are an amazing human. I'm so honored to meet you. Oh. And I know we're going to do great things together. Thank you so much. I'm really, really stoked to be here today.
It's just the beginning for us.
I know.
So what I like to do for the very first question of the call is draw a card from my highly inspired cannabis-inspired oracle deck. It's called the Follow Your Heart Oracle deck. It's a 24-card collection of watercolor art that I painted and wisdom channeled through my relationship with cannabis that invites the user to build deep communication within, like cannabis does itself. So the card I've chosen for our conversation is patience. So I'd love to hear how cannabis relates to patience for you.
Thank you for that question, Tori. The inherent powers of cannabis is patience. Because when you look at cannabis and the mechanism, the way it works, it helps us to relax. It helps us to calm. And when you are calm, then you are able to, not take everything as in hyper. You are able to have that patience, especially for folks like us that have children, young children in particular. It can be challenging to get them to behave sometimes. So cannabis is really an ally in that area.
You nailed that. From my experience anyway, I tend to be quite reactive. That's like how I know my anxiety is flaring, is if I'm acting reactive. And especially with my children, it's been such an ally for being able to just slow down, be patient with them. And my son's particular 8 million questions. And exactly what you said, be patient. Thank you.
Yeah.
So what was your original perception of cannabis? Did you grow up knowing this plant? Has your perception shifted?
Yeah, that is a great question. Like you just mentioned, I grew up in western part of Africa. The earlier part of my life was in Nigeria, and growing up in that part of the world, medicinal herbs were the first line of therapy. I mean, it's not like they don't have clinics and all, contrary to all those really hyper narratives that you hear out there. They do have good hospitals and clinics, but focus is always on herbal medicine. So I grew up in that environment, and you don't even really learn about these herbs. You just know. So that is that. But the only one specific herbs that we were specifically warned against was cannabis. They, like most families, very conservative family background. I was from that type of background too. So you just want that, okay, cannabis, this is drug, don't mess with it. And you grow up and believe that lies that has been spread for generations. Fast forward to me, of course, some members of the family didn't follow their protocol. They decided to go the cannabis route and use it for their own adult use. For me, I've always been a clinically oriented person. Looking at those family members that was using cannabis at that time, I didn't see any harm this plant did to them. That was what actually drew my interest to the plant initially. Then, as a clinician, when I started digging deep into this plant, it wasn't long for me to be convinced that this were just lies that people spread about this plant just for political gain, among other things.
Right. And I'm curious to know if there were other herbals that had psychoactive effects that were completely accepted that you grew up with.
See, that is another thing in that environment. See, growing up in that environment, they don't really know whether these plants were psychoactive. One of the main, even psychedelics.
Mm-hmm.
Psychedelics wasn't even mentioned, like mushroom, all this DMT and all these other plants, mescaline, peyote, and all that. In that our own circle, in my own environment, they never really say, oh, this is the plant you shouldn't touch or you shouldn't do anything. It's just that I think part of what happens with cannabis is when the lies were spread here in United States and the Western world, it directly filter to the African community, and they just take it and run with it. The colonial mentality, they just take it and run with it. But that was the most popular lies that was passed in the community back then. So when you look at psychedelics, many of these plants they were used for their rituals. They might not know the names that it was called, but people use it for herbal medicine, and they didn't see anything in it. Recently, I was looking at Ebola plant.
Yes.
And I was looking at the Vocana africana, because somebody mentioned it in my Clubhouse room. So I was like, I don't know, let me go check that. When I look at this plant, I'm like, I used to see my family, my dad I used to have this plant in my house, and I didn't even know this has a psychedelic property. So there's a lot of herbals growing now that we don't even know what they contain, but they do use it.
That's so potent.
I know.
Kind of exciting for me because my family isn't, my direct family who I communicate with from Nigeria is not like tapped into the herbal medicine any longer, like at this time. And so it's been hard for me to try to trace back to the ancient psychedelics and like be connected with these roots from firsthand experience or familial experience. But I know that that's where they originated in ibogaine or the iboga plant. So it's really fascinating to me to know that you've witnessed this plant and been in its energy without even knowing. It's so familiar.
Yeah. And you see, that is another thing, especially when it comes to religion. Christianity has really pushed the herbal, medicinal herb part of the culture to the background because of that. That belief that this thing they are practicing witchcraft or all those type of things. So even now, a lot of families have moved away. A lot of families have moved away from the Renaissance, the psychedelic and the cannabis Renaissance that is beginning, the green Renaissance that is beginning to come up. And it's so funny because also the other day I was listening to a documentary about Ebola, and they were talking about how the Gabonese are having opioid with problem right now as a result of tramadol in their community, and they weren't even aware of the potential of the Ebola helping to heal addiction. So the Western community are the ones that are now calling their attention to that. How paradoxical is that, Tori?
Oh my gosh, that is just wild.
I know.
I actually sat in a course in June with Darren Springer. I'm not sure if you're familiar, but we were learning all about the, African roots of these plants and how, now Iboga is being sort of marketed in that way of assistance with addiction problems. But before there were addiction problems, that kind of stemmed from this colonialism, they would utilize this plant medicine as a preventive, a spiritual and energetic preventive to maintain the community. I love that. It makes sense to me.
I mean, I witnessed some of that, I personally growing up, like after people that comes to my Clubhouse room, they've heard that story so many times. Growing up, we use mango tree and the leaves for malaria. So, I grew up in an environment whereby if I feel like I have the symptoms of malaria, you just go to the back of the house. We had the tree at the back of my house. You take some of the leaves, you cut off some of the bark of the tree, and you brew it like you do, even like you do the ayahuasca type of brewing, and you drink. The next thing you are out there playing and having and back on the street playing. So I actually experienced that firsthand,
So what was your experience like in pharmacy school, and how much time did they spend on herbals? Because I know my experience, which was more than brief. So what was going through your mind when you were in pharmacy school, and how much did you get on herbal medicine?
Tori, yours was brief. Mine was super brief when it comes to herbal. And my professors, they were always thorough with everything. But medicinal herb, we wasn't so much focused on. I mean, we went through the curriculum, but it wasn't really something major. I think, to tell you the truth, if I even have to look back, it's more of the negative side effect that was emphasized more. Like the kava side effect, or especially with kava, it was more of the side effect that was emphasized.
Likewise. And I hope I'm not remembering wrong. I feel I don't want to bash anyone or anything, but if I think back, I feel like it was the same scenario. It might be one lecture, maybe vitamins, minerals wrapped into that. And just, cautionary of these have a bunch of interactions, basically.
That was what I took out of. Yeah, that was what I took out of my herbal class, that basically to be careful and not even, that kind of even scared me away from things like kava. you know, you know.
Yeah, so it's really difficult. I acknowledge how difficult it is to be a practitioner and want to tie in herbal medicine and holistic and functional medicine and not really know where to start or what to do because there haven't been great examples and resources. And it's our work, you and I sitting here, to bridge this gap.
Absolutely. That was part of why I jumped into the cannabis space. For me, really, even though they didn't go into details of it in farm school, I grew, like I said, I used it. Mm-hmm. I used it growing up. So it's never been something that I would say, oh, no, I can discredit this. No, mm-hmm. I just never compare that, oh, this is good or this is, but it's just been good. The only not so cool part of it for me growing up was the fact that most of those brews are always very bitter. It's not fun to drink them.
Totally.
But you know, to tell you the truth, it works. Sometimes I tell people, I said some of this herbal medicine that I used growing up, I even trust them more than my traditional, conventional pharmaceutics. Because I mean, that's my experience with it.
I have more questions, but I can talk to you forever. So let me just ask my questions. What is your experience with that? Because you said at the top of the call, with the herbal medicine that you grew up with, you don't even need to learn it. You just know it. It's this knowing. It's intuitive in a way. So how do you navigate this more pharmaceutical Western world of you must learn and have this logical information, and then on the herbal side having that be a bit more ethereal and knowing, how do you navigate that?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Tori. Like you said, we are the drug expert, the medicine expert. And when I was growing up, you just know that mango tree, the leaf and all that, lemongrass, all these will help you to deal with malaria. So there are some other herbs that they will put in more of like a alcohol-based product that you will use for diarrhea or constipation, things like that we use. Fast forward to when I went to pharmacy school and we started learning about medchem, chemistry, medicinal mechanism of action of these plants and these medicines. It dawned on me, though, that look here, really, this herbal medicine, these plants, they are actually medicine. And they have active ingredients in them. For example, the mango tree and the leaves that we were using to cure malaria, if you do an assay on that plant, you realize that quinine is one of the major anti-malaria drugs that we give. If you're going to Africa, you dispense that quinine sulfate.
Yes.
That's one of the active ingredients in that plant, in the mango tree. And that is really, like you said, intuitively what our ancestors were using, tapping into the healing powers of this plant. They do have active ingredients. And that's why I tell people, these plants, they are medicine. If they are medicine, we need to treat them as such. You cannot go over the counter and grab a bottle of Tylenol and just gulp it down. That is why people need people like you and me to be able to help them to navigate this space, especially when we are talking about psychoactive plants like cannabis or the ayahuasca or the iboga. These are plants. Another thing I want to quickly drop there, which I know you know, but to our audience, is the fact that a lot of our conventional medicine were originally derived from plants. Look, morphine was from poppy seed. Aspirin, our traditional aspirin, was derived from birch leaf and bark, So we already have this. Nature is being good to us. Nature is just perfect. We cannot improve in nature. And when we start to modify and twist around, just like we were doing with the opioid, the morphine, this endorphin that we have in our body was already doing an amazing job. Then we come in and start changing the side chain. Then what did we get? We start getting all this super addictive medicine. I'm going to pass the mic back to you because I can go on forever, Tori.
I'm feeling something in my body right now, Dr. Lola. It's just, this is like such a profound conversation. It's very important.
Tori, you know what I'm talking about. You are a clinician. You know what we go through, and you know when we talk about them modifying all this side chain, this is what frustrates a lot of us. And to tell you the truth, Tori, I'm beginning to see that pattern in the psychedelic space as the discussion keep coming up every day. And I'm thinking within myself, okay, maybe I'm the bearers of the bad news or the one that want to say, whoa, we need to chill. We need to chill. Have you heard of the one they are attaching to THC phosphate? And I'm like, there we go again.
Right, exactly. With the integrity, like that is what we are here to preserve in the plant world and the psychedelic renaissance. It's like we need the people that understand not only like the science and the potency and what we could do with that, but we need someone and people to preserve the spirituality and the energetics of these things that nature gives us as is, that are amazing as is.
Absolutely. I tell people every day, I say nature is perfect. Nature's already given unto us the amazing beauty. A lot of the time, I mean, does that mean we are all, or we're not going to need Western civilization or Western modification so that we can scale up to the patient? Absolutely. But we have to, there's a gray area. We shouldn't be thinking so much about the profit. More, we should think a lot about the patient and not go all crazy and just compounding stuff and twisting things just because we want to say, because when you look at this plant, a lot of these plants, average farmers, they're not going to be able to say, this is my patent. So for you to get a patent on botanical, it's going to be a lot of fights about that. So trying to modify it to make it look more powerful, there can be a gray area there. But other than that, I feel like both sides is going to have to work together.
Yes, the harmony. That is exactly what is running through my head. How you've been answering this question and how I was asking you, like, how do you navigate science versus intuition? And it's the marriage of both. It's the honoring of both, respecting both. And I like what you're saying with how this is all moving, because it feels like it's moving really fast. And we want it to. We want the medicine to be available to the people. And at the same time, we have to go back to that patient's card and be a little patient with the process. We need to think this out. We can't just dominate. Like, these are the plants and nature moves how it's going to move. So like, let's do it right.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. And most of the time in my room, in Clubhouse room, I tell people when they say, we don't want big pharma. I say, no, you need big farmers. Big farmers have perfected the art, so many things that we can we can learn from the big pharma and bring it to the plant medicine space to help us scale these things. I mean, it's not visible for us to take everybody and take them to Peru or to Gabon or South or West Africa for healing. So we're going to need the technology that big pharma have perfected for generations. In the areas of route of administration, big pharma have gone way ahead of everything. We're going to need that technology to help us scale. So don't come and say, we don't need big pharma. Yes, we do need big pharmas.
Wow, that's actually a very interesting conversation. I wasn't expecting to go there. I am going to reroute in just a moment, but that is something that I was listening to about Iboga is, the scarcity of the plant and making sure that the plant stays intact and is sacred and not over harvested. And so, yes, that's where big pharma could come in and
absolutely
navigate these compounds so that people have the experience. But then you're getting into, then you're getting into, natural versus synthetic. And it's a lot to think about.
It is a lot to think about, but at the same time, like I said, a lot of these pharmaceutics that we have right now, they originated from the natural plant. I just my own thing is that we should the big pharma, and when I talk about big pharma, me and you, we are part of the big pharma. That's who we are. we can't distance ourselves from them. So
I tried.
when we try to modify this thing, we just have to be conversant, and I'm gonna borrow that word you use: respect the indigenous people, respect this plant, at the same time find a way to do it in an ethical ways.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I hear you. This is amazing. We should talk. I'm going to get in your room. I'm going to come to your room so I can do this with you all the time. But Dr. Lola, in your experience, how does the cannabis plant serve you?
For me, cannabis plant is an ally in the sense that maybe it's part of when I look at my life, I feel like, okay, I've been an herbal user all my life. Maybe I'm blessed in that way. I'm not on any pharmaceutics per se, but cannabis is my wellness tools. As we age, even you might not be on traditional pharmaceutics, but as we age, our body ages too. So I use cannabis as a wellness tools. I use it kind of like my multivitamin. I use my CBD 60/40 on a daily basis. Kind of that's how I use it. It's a wellness, it's a tool, it's a wellness tool for me for daily balance.
I love hearing that. I think that's an important perspective that I have had it on the show, but hearing you say it is new to me. It just feels new because, I utilize cannabis for anxiety and these specific things, but overall health as well. It's totally available for that. Anti-inflammatory, which everyone could probably use. So I love that perspective.
Yeah, you see, our endocannabinoid, the way I explain endocannabinoid system to people sometimes is the fact that as we age, when we are younger, we don't need those vitamins. You know, the kids, you take them to the doctor, they say they don't really need vitamin. Give them good food. Mm-hmm. But as we age, our body begins to change. And that's when we start taking vitamins. Why can't we supplement our endocannabinoid system with cannabis like CBD or whatever ratio we decide to go with? It is. And we shouldn't, part of why I normally tell people is this: it's not just for healing alone, it's also for wellness. We can use it just like we use our vitamins.
Yeah, that was the way I wanted to say it. Thank you for summing that up. And so, how do you serve the plant?
For me, I am so super passionate about decriminalizing this plant. This is plant. It is botanical. It's not different from our spinach. The beautiful thing when it comes to cannabis is that compare it to our spinach, to our broccoli, it has that endocannabinoid in there that is super, super powerful. So we should decriminalize this plant. I am an advocate for debunking all the lies about this plant. That's why I am putting a face to this. My colleagues think I'm crazy. Oh, the license thing, you are a clinical pharmacist and all that stuff. But we have to put a face to what we believe. This is a plant, and I'm out here advocating for it and giving people my experience with herbal medicine. And the fact that I even have family members that have used this plant successfully to manage all kind of ailments.
Definitely, you are doing that. So what is your day-to-day like with consulting?
For me, I consult with healthcare professionals. I don't handle THC because of regulations, and I have my own brand, Glows hemp CBD derived products. So I also have master classes, cannabis as medicine master classes. Is cannabis my ticket to a good night's sleep? So I put up those type of master classes that I consult with healthcare clinicians to help them navigate that space. Most of the time is mostly educational, webinar, master classes, things like that, to bring that knowledge to the general public. And even the dispensary, like I heard you talking earlier with your previous age, on your guest about dispensary. A lot of the bartender, they are not paid to be a clinician. They are not paid to be a pharmacist or to be a physician. So they might not have the tools that they need for that. So I also train staffs of dispensary in that, about the general knowledge of cannabis.
That's an incredible place to be, Dr. Lola. I like that. That's a cool perspective.
Thank you.
What is the question that you get asked the most about cannabis, and what's your answer?
When it comes to cannabis, one of the most important questions that I get asked a lot, especially when we start talking to people that are new to the plant, is route of administration. That's challenging for people. Route of administration. And for me, what I answer them is that it depends on what they are managing. If it's just like a acute condition, when we talk about acute, it's just something that you need relief right now, I would suggest something like lozenges, like tinctures, those, or vaping. If whoever is asking the question is not into smoke or anything, like, vaping, tincture, things like that. But if it's like a chronic condition, I would move them towards edibles, because that has a longer duration of action. It stays longer in the body, but at the same time, we have to be very careful when we are doing edibles.
Definitely.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that is tricky because there are so many options. I love how versatile cannabis is, but that might be where someone asks for help of a professional, is like, where do I go? What do I do? There's too many options. And I really hate to see a patient check something out and not quite get that route of administration correct for them, and dosing and all of these other factors. But then they just kind of write off their experience with cannabis. So getting the correct route of administration is really important.
Yeah, you're very right. I always try to take my time, especially when it comes to, we are and I'm not trying to blow our head, clinicians, pharmacists, we have studied extensively the way this medicine works. So when I try to explain it to people, it always can help them a lot. Because you cannot just go to anybody and say, oh, go take edibles. They need to explain we need to be able to explain to patients that, look here, edible it works, but it takes a little bit longer. It depends on what you are managing, and all these are very, very important to be able to help our patient or client navigate that space. That's why we need, skilled people, and it doesn't necessarily mean, does that mean we are going to take it from the indigenous people? No, that's not what we are saying. But what we are saying is that these are medicine and needs to be treated as such.
Yes, back to that respectability. Ooh, okay. What cannabis resources do you recommend?
For me, if you are new to, you want to just know the general history as per what the activists did those days. I like the Cannabis Manifesto by Steve D'Angelo. When it comes to, one of my favorite resources is this podcast called Cannabis Health Radio. And part of why I love that podcast is because it's focused on cancer. These are folks that have battling cancer or have battled cancer and successfully manage cancer with cannabis, and they come on this show and tell their story and give us anecdotal evidence that cannabis is able to manage cancer. In fact, one of the hosts of that show also manage her cancer with cannabis. So I love referring that to any of my clients that have history of cancer or they are battling that disease. Other than that, of course, for folks that I have a book, A Pharmacist's Guide to Cannabis, Perspective of a Non-Conforming Clinician. It's a basic guide that focuses a lot on toppings, on cannabinoid. And that's one of the tools that I use, especially when I work with dispensaries. You can just give your patient or your client this book, and they don't have to bug you about, what type of topping do I need if I need to sleep, if I need to relax. All those are addressed. It's a basic, about 50-page book, but it's really, really kind of like a good reference. If I have to say that, myself. Yeah.
Of course. Yes, please. And share your specific resources. You just shared one, but where can people find you?
Yeah, my website, wci-health.com. That's my website. You can find out everything about me and how to work with me on there. And I'm on IG, WCI Health 19. You can check that out. Other than that, I'm always on Clubhouse. We have a Cannabis Psychedelic Club. We have it every Wednesday and Saturday, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And that's my mail. Of course, I'm on LinkedIn as my name, Dr. Lola Ohonba on LinkedIn.
And what about your podcast?
I also have a podcast, Let's Talk Plant Medicine, Cannabis, Psychedelics, and Pharmaceutics with Dr. O. In fact, in about next week, we're going to be publishing our interview with Your Highness, Dr. Tori Reri. So we're going to have you, your episode is coming next week. So go check that out. It's really great. We are having fun on the show as well. We just started doing the YouTube, recording it and posting it on YouTube. So that I'm really excited about that.
Yay, me too. Thank you for having me. Okay, so Dr. Lola, we're at the end of our call. Is there anything else that you would like to leave with the listeners?
I just want to tell our listeners that plant medicine for generation is being allied to our forefathers. It's not the bad guy that sometimes we tend to hear the press present it as. And if you are going to work with this plant, like I said earlier, they have active ingredients in them. So treat it like your regular medicine. Consult with clinicians, consult with people that you know will know about the plant. Don't go it alone. Thank you so much, Tori, for that question.
Perfect. Thank you, Dr. Lola, for your time and your wisdom.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you. You have a great day. And folks, please go check Tori's website out. She's doing a great, great job for our community. We really do appreciate her spirit in this space.
Thank you. Thank you so much for tuning in to 6 Degrees from Cannabis. If you connected with this episode, please share it with a friend who would benefit from hearing it too. Tap the subscribe button to be notified when the next 6 Degrees episode is released. You can find more information about holistic healing, the Follow Your Heart Oracle deck, and what I do by visiting toryrerick.com. If you message us on Instagram at the 6 Degrees from Cannabis, we'll be sure to message you back. Bliss be with you.